Welcome to Proof Points, a podcast by Latham High-Tech Seeds. Family owned and farm proven for more than 75 years, Latham Seeds is growing strong. Now, here's product manager and host of Proof Points, Steve Sick.
Today we're here with Ken Heinus, Northern DSM/RSM for Latham. How are you today, Ken?
Great, Steve. Thanks to be here. Looking forward to helping you guys out a little bit and tell you what's going on in my large region that I have.
Good. I know, unlike most years, 2023 really threw you a massive curveball this year. I know we kind of spoke about it earlier, but maybe you'll give the audience maybe an update. Are you done planting yet?
In some areas, yes, and some areas not. I have quite a big area.
Right.
The state of North Dakota, upper half of Minnesota, and then the upper half of South Dakota. So I'm going to start with North Dakota. North Dakota and some of my areas are in drought. It did get planted for what they were going to put in the ground, and the further east that you go, we're basically in the ground, and we're anywhere in the the emergence stage on beans to the V1, maybe V2 stage if they got in a little bit early. Corn's about the same thing. They're in that V1, V2 stages throughout and up and down the Red River Valley. South Dakota is really needing moisture severely. They are planted both beans and soy or corn. And what we haven't done yet, and we are working on it, is that the tree claims up north had a lot of snow in them, 6-7 feet of snow. And of course, it took some time to melt because April was really, really a cold month for us.
Mhm.
And so that left a couple passes up by the tree claim that they're now going back and replanting soybeans, and some instances some corn on the early variety maturity ranges. So yeah, there's quite a spread in my territory. I get to see quite a bit of different planting dates and emergence, and I can't make it to all of them, but I have great dealers that will keep me informed on what's happening, especially in the test plots that we have currently have all planted as of Friday. So
good.
So we're moving forward. So
Good. You mentioned about, snow on the tree lines at planting and, maybe if the soil temperatures are a little cooler. Is it pretty much you don't hold true to the wait till it's 50 degrees soil temperature? Otherwise you would really be delayed in planting, or do you plant a little earlier?
there's some, as soon as we start smelling dust, somewhere down the line, they get in regardless of soil temperatures or not. But to hold true, a lot of the guys will hold back until that temperature hits that 48, 49 degrees,
Okay.
and they'll start going pretty good. But what held us back was the wetness of the soils this year. Most of these guys are very good growers. All of them are good growers. It's just the idea of waiting and not mudding things in, because as we all realize that you mud things in, is that your stand count really, really pays on mudding everything in. So
Right. Yeah. Have you seen a big uptick in tiling up there?
Oh, yeah. There isn't too many soils up and down the Red River Valley. So I'm talking about,
Right.
east side of I-29 is that every year there's a quarter going in, if not a section going into tiling. Tiling has made a big difference in taking the salt out of our soils up here, and helping drop the salts helps drop some of the pHs that we have, which are quite high up and down the valley. The further west that you go, yeah, there's some tiling going on, but that's usually sandier, drier soils that basically will dry up or not dry up, but at least get you moisture enough and without having to tile the ground.
Right.
And some of the soils we run across in South Dakota, you're looking at a lot of the soils that are gravelly and sandy.
Mhm.
But there is some silt down there that they do tile down there. So it has helped immensely, especially
good.
getting the fields when it's wet.
Right. With all the different soil types you mentioned, I'm just curious, has Latham done a good job of keeping up on, having hybrids and varieties for all those specific needs? Because obviously you've got a lot of niche environments, microclimates, soil types, everything else.
Yeah, Latham is a company of options. And when we when I go out and when the dealers go out and we talk to the growers, and that's one of the main questions that we ask is, is there a salt issue out here?
Mm,
How high is your pH? The lower the pH, the lower the salts. The more choices that grower will have that we can recommend. When we get in the heart of the Red River Valley, Fargo Moorhead area up north of us and south of us, is that the salts are pretty prevalent in the soils, and we got to be very careful on the selections that we do for the grower. And last year, of all the fields that our northern production manager Gary Geske and myself that we were in and out of, we've seen that the Extend Flex lineup was far superior in strength than the E3s, and there's been quite a shift throughout even northern North Dakota. I mean, up and down the Red River Valley of going back into the Extend Flex lineup. Um, but the convenience of E3s, there's a lot of growers that like that convenience. Lower pHs, they can get by using the E3s, and we have a great selection of E3s when that does happen. So it's not uncommon to do, I mean, 10 miles away and make a different selection of traits
right.
to different growers. So
You'd mentioned about Extend Flex. Is that really for the herbicide or for the defense?
defense,
Defense.
yeah, that plant is very strong up and down the valley. The herbicides, of course, with the restrictions of time,
Right.
that really puts a pinch on the growers up and down using dicamba.
Right. Yeah, it does. I mean, with the challenges you had, did you see much of an acreage shift this year? But beets, potatoes, or pretty much all those contracted go in, sunflowers especially.
The northern tier of mine, Minnesota, North Dakota, the guys that raise the edible beans,
Hmm.
and that's been pretty strong. The contracts have been very strong in the last few years. So they pretty much stick to that edible bean. It all depends on the moistures and the coldness that they might drop back into a soybean. And
Hmm.
not this year is probably the least amount of acre change that I've seen. Even though the weather was tough and we had a lot of cold weather, everybody got what they pretty much planned, earlier on, early winter, and stayed with their plan. So it's been quite nice that way.
Oh, that's good to hear. I didn't know if there'd be a big shift with the wheat being down across Kansas, Oklahoma with the drought, or whether there'd be a big shift or not.
Well, these guys take a look at the weather that we have throughout up and down the valley,
Hmm.
and we're seeing warmer temperatures, and that plays a big part in the wheat. Um, there was a lot of wheat that went in up north, and we're starting to see a lot less of it, especially in the heart of the Red River Valley. And as we get down under Highway 2, um, uh, and I think the heat and the decisions of what heat does to the grain crop, I think that's a major decision where they'll go back and go back into rotations of
Okay.
corn, soybeans, sugar beets, and and grains. So.
Mhm. Yeah. You'd mentioned about, a little bit of temperature shift and that stuff. Are you seeing a big shift in maturity ranges?
Not yet, no. As you know, that I go from a double odd bean up in northern part
Hmm.
and the southern part into South Dakota. I'm planting anywhere from a 1.6 to a 1.8. Um, so that's been pretty much in the last decade. I haven't seen too much of that shift, as you mentioned. It's pretty much been staying the same.
Yeah, you're getting warmer earlier, but that unfortunate frost date is still holding true in everybody's mind, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, so kind of like myself, I mean, you have a lot of experience in the seed industry. What's been the biggest change you've seen? For me, it was the introduction of Roundup Ready soybeans. That pretty much changed the industry in my book. Didn't know if you'd seen anything different in your territory.
Well, I'm going to touch on that because this is talked about quite a bit when I'm talking to a lot of the older growers, and the younger ones coming in. And don't get me wrong, that Roundup trait that came in the '90s, early '90s, was huge.
Hmm.
It was a game changer to agricultural because hey, we could go down the lakes and enjoy the lakes for a while. So it was a game changer, especially with weed resistance. It was just a huge game changer for agriculture. But what I see in the last all the years I've been doing this is that I'm going with technology. Huge. I mean, if you take a look where technology has taken medicine and surgery and everything else and communications in the last 4 decades, 50 years, 40, 50 years, has done the same thing to the grower, to the farmer. You're seeing bigger farms. And the reason for that, you've seen higher yields and less manual labor, only because of technology. I mean, geez, when you're going out in the field, and I know you've been to uh, remote controlled tractors following the combine, that's one less guy being out in the field.
Right.
When you take a look, and I have a lot of ranchers also in the state of North Dakota, and and most of them raise their beef outside, but a lot of the dairy people, especially the bigger dairy farmers, everything's been inside and raised. That's quite a change, and that's only because of technology.
That's interesting you say that, especially about yields. I mean, what kind of yield bump have you seen over the last couple of decades? I know we've gotten a lot better at early corn hybrids, yielding more than what we've ever seen before. So I'm assuming you've seen the same thing.
Yeah, when you take a look at the beans, and when our families were starting out with a conventional bean, and we were very fortunate probably to get 25 to 30 bushel, and that was on a good year when Mother Nature blessed us big time.
Right.
And when you're taking a look at the new traits that we have out now, and what we can do with marker assist breeding, that's huge. And when you can see some of these growers up here, taking our 0.5 to our 0.9 up here and getting 60 to 65 bushels on a good year, I mean, that's huge. That's a big game changer when it comes to ROI on their farms. Everything has gotten expensive. I mean, our inputs have gotten high. Our equipment is high. We need to have and maintain that 35 to 40 bushels just to maintain profitability. And the traits are doing that, but Mother Nature, we need a lot of help from Mother Nature in a lot of years. So
right. You mentioned about soybeans, your break-even point. What's your break-even point for corn?
That's the mixed feeling depending where I'm at in the geography that I have. But they're looking at out west, the drought-driven areas. There was like 4 years ago, I had a rancher out there who was happy to get 35 bushel.
Wow.
And 3397 has always been to go to corn plant in that West River area or the southern part of North Dakota, and there was a couple other companies that were involved on his farmstead that had no ears whatsoever. And he was happy to get 35 bushel. But so you're talking anywhere from, on an average, everybody up and down the valley likes to see the 180 on up, of course.
Right.
And dry, of course.
Of course, you might as well ask for it all.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, one thing I want to touch on is new for 2023 is the Northern Premier Agronomy Center. Can you tell us more about your plans for that site and maybe what it has to offer?
Yeah, this is actually the startup year. Everything was decided quite late in the springtime. So we have it planted, but what we want to see is that we want to see, just like we would have down in Alexander, Iowa, we want to see, different tests on different planting depths. We want to see exactly and how seed treatment works across a broad range of conditions up here. So, and that being said, is that we also would like to show product development up here with our R&D and explain exactly where John wants to take his legacy to and the next step that he's doing. And the R&D for the local growers here to see the different plants, the different technologies, especially the marker assistance, that how we can create what we want desirable in the fields in a quick order. We're going to be able to see a lot of that across the board. We're not going to see in our plot, we're not going to see a lot of different soils. It's all going to be one soil, but we'll get to be able to bring in our new products We get to show them the different stages and spend time with them and explain to them, hey, this is where it's at. Your ROI is going to be right here. Looking at the products that you're looking at, and convince them that Latham is going to be the company in the future that's grown in their backyard, tested in their backyard, and proven.
Yeah,
so
and
that's
I think
going to be a big thing. So
yeah, I think it's good to show we're investing in the north. I mean, obviously, it's a very key part of Latham's growth, and I really think that with the agronomy center, I really think it's great for customers to get out and touch and feel things. I'm assuming you feel the same as well.
Yeah, this year is, I think the decisions that we have talked about is to take, individual farmers or a group of 3 or 4 at a time and bring them in and build that relationship for the ones who haven't bought from us or seen what we're doing as a company, a family-owned company. So it's going to really help assist a lot of the growers around me within 100, even 200-mile radius to bring in growers and spend time with them.
No, I think it's key. We really look forward to the invitations and spending some time up there and getting to know everybody. Probably, and also too, enjoy a good lunch.
Yeah, that's on the agenda, by the way. You bet. And of course, beverages is called water. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Depending on what time of the day the tour is. And with that, Ken, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Proof Points. Thanks for tuning in and have a great week.
Yeah, thank you. You also.